Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Bollywood Cinema Club, a podcast where we take a look at Indian cinema every other Wednesday. I am your host, Chris Dashu of the Culture Cast, where this show was spun off from. I am joined by my good friend. You have heard her on here before. You have heard her on the Culture Cast. You have heard her all sorts of places. You can find her over at Mondo Heather Drain.
Good evening or morning, wherever you may be.
And good Amir Khan to you as well.
Oh, every day is a good Amir Khan day.
This is like the unofficial American Amir Khan fan club, the fan of club of two.
Yes, but we are growing in numbers soon enough. I think the more we do this, our numbers will be legion.
We'll bring more people into the Amir Khan sphere. On this episode of the Bollywood Cinema Club, we are going to be talking about 1998's Amir Khan starring Ghulam, which is translated to slave. So the film is directed by Vikram Bhatt. It is written by Ajum Rajabali, and it stars the one and only Amir Khan as Siddharth Sidhu Marathe, who is he's a boxer, and his brother is his manager, but also the right-hand man for Ronnie Singh, which is the best name. Ronnie Singh.
Wait, didn't I see him on the Grand Ole Opry?
Yeah,
that
good
sounds
old
like
Ronnie.
such a country. Ronnie?
Good old Ronnie Singh.
I have a great uncle named Ronnie. That is how Southern that name is.
But his name's actually Ronak Singh, and he's kind of the mob boss, the boss of this little area in Mumbai. And well, wouldn't you know it, they run the Amir Khan and Ronnie Singh have some run-ins together, and well, Ronnie Singh hires Amir Khan to do some work for him and then take a fall, and well, we'll be talking about it. This movie is apparently based on the Waterfront, which I would not have guessed. Your reaction and my reaction are the same to that piece of information.
I think somebody's gaslighting.
It's just like On the Waterfront. No. But so Heather, this was the first time for both of us watching this film, obviously, as is normally the case on this podcast. So tell me a little bit about your initial thoughts on Ghulam.
Well, Ghulam, I love doing this show. I love talking about anything with Chris. Which is why, we talk about everything.
It's true.
In multiple capacities. But,
you have only ever said no one time. But what doesn't even know it was, I don't want to talk about this because it was so bad.
Oh, that was rough. Yeah.
I don't think we'll ever find anything here that bad, I would hope.
No. And honestly, I shouldn't have pushed out on you, and I apologize for that. But that was bad. And I mean, I've talked about some bad shit, but this Ghulam thankfully was not that bad. I will say my first thoughts, I think of the Amir Khan stuff that you and I have talked about and watched, I think it may be my least favorite. It's a little muddled. It's a little messy. But that said, I do think it's entertaining. Some of the musical numbers I think are very charming. Amir Khan, of course, I mean, he's such a star, and he's just I think just like more and more, it's not just because he's, charismatic, because of course he is. And actually that's sort of the thing we've talked about a lot with these movies. Like, so many of the Bollywood movies have just chock full of these great actors that are very charismatic and very watchable, and the cast is great in this. This is no exception. But he's so good at bringing the emotion in a way that is very tangible, even when some of the camera angles and editing is there's one scene in particular we'll get to that, I mean, it became kind of funny, and it shouldn't have been funny. It was a moment that was not funny, but it was so like dramatic prairie dog in its like approach that it was a lot. But I liked it as a whole. But what was your initial takeaway, Chris?
I more or less agree with your sentiment that this might be the least favorite thing of Amir Khan that you've seen, that we've watched. And I would even go as far as to say it is my least favorite thing of Amir Khan's that I've seen in all of the things that I've seen from him. And it actually, for the most part, it doesn't have anything to do with him or any of the actors, really. I think for me, the narrative is just an hour too long. I mean, it's 2 hours. And I mean, this movie, again, you can listen to this show and know that I do not complain about the lengths of the movies unless we absolutely have to. This is one of those cases. This is a case where this movie is at least 30 minutes too long, and maybe even almost an hour too long. There are parts of this story that feel like they could be excised completely. Some characters, Rani Mukherjee in this movie is almost forgotten about in the second half of the movie in a way that like I wasn't expecting, given her star power and her abilities and who she is as an actress. But I was actually surprised at how kind of I felt. It was okay.
Yeah.
But I just think like the story that they're telling is not that interesting.
No. And I mean, on the waterfront, my ass, like I
can't believe that that's what they're trying. Like, that's what they're trying to claim this was. Like, my
brain just broke when you told me that. Like a little synapse just kind of, it's like when a light bulb dies. That's what just happened. I don't see it. And also, even the title, how do you go from on the waterfront to slave? And why is it called slave? Is that a meta?
Because he's the slave to Ronnie Singh for like maybe 30 minutes of this movie. Like, he doesn't do that much for Amir Khan's character doesn't really do much for Ronnie Singh. He does like two things. He goes and beats up the cricketer, and then he takes the dive in that match. And that's it.
That's it. And even then, like he loses. Okay, I was gonna save this but you can't. I can't hold this any longer. So because of course we find out, we get to see his character arc throughout the movie. Amir Khan's character, Sid, I kept calling him just Sid in my notes, but because, when we first see him, he's being kind of like, he's stealing from his lawyer, who's this lovely lady, Madame, I can't remember what her actual name is. I know they call her Madame a lot. Madame, not Madame. Madame's that horrible puppet.
Fatima, yeah.
Fatima.
Yeah.
And she's great. I like that actress a lot. She had good presence. And he's stealing money from her. He's just, him and his friends are just kind of hooligans, but seem fairly harmless other than stealing. They go out and party, etc. I didn't even realize he was a boxer until a little bit further in the movie, because you see him doing exercises, but I just thought, well, he's trying to get in shape,
right?
And also I just thought maybe it was fan service, so we could see Amir Khan working out.
I mean, also valid.
Yeah. But we get to see him, his character more and more just realize like he wants to be more honorable. And he has these flashbacks to his dead father, who had this whole thing of teaching his sons, like, don't go with the current, a real man goes against the waves and forges his own path, which is a good lesson. But by the time we get to the boxing match, he's told to throw it. And there's this random child that comes up later in the movie. Who was that Fatima's kid? Who was that kid?
I am so glad you brought this kid up.
Yeah, I'm like, who was this kid? Because at first I'm like, well, maybe they're showing, this child, the children love him and he's having to throw this match and he's disappointing them or whatever. But then he comes back up. And I'm like, well, wait, did I miss something? Like, who's this child? Who's this random little crying boy that loves Siddhartha? I was going to say Siddhartha. Different character, Amir Khan's character, Sid. Like, you didn't, okay, so you didn't know either?
I didn't understand what was going on with that little kid. I just, that's the thing about this movie, and you kind of mentioned some of the weird editing choices. The climax of this movie, I think, is a pretty good example of what you're talking about with the editing choices. The editing choices are similar to another movie that I have watched for this show called Sarfaraz, which came out, I want to say around this time. It's an Amir Khan movie where he's a kind of like a no-nonsense cop who's trying to take down some terrorists on the Pakistan-India border. And it has the same weird editing that this movie does, where it's like they don't want to stay on a shot for too long.
Right.
But they also don't show you anything in the edit to warrant even seeing that piece of footage the way that they're showing it. And then on top of everything else, I don't know if you noticed this, the soundtrack, not the musical numbers, the soundtrack is it changes almost every scene. It like in the climax, like it would like jump, it would be like it would be like it tonally would be jumping to the point where it's like different musical pieces.
Oh God. I didn't even think about that initially, but now that you're saying it, yeah, the fight scene almost felt like, to me, it almost belonged to a different movie, though. Like the climax of that movie, I don't know. That's again kind of the part of the problem is like we're kind of fed a little bit early on that, okay, Ronnie's character, he's a bad guy. At first I thought he was a bookie, to be honest.
Well, he's like, he runs a travel agency, but he is like running protection, like the mob would, I guess.
Yeah, but it's like, but he also seems like he could be like a possible, almost like a slumlord type, because he's trying to get this bill, and he's being, him and his goons are being horrible to these local businesses that are on that block. And we see this one character, Harry, who is like this, I'm trying to think, he's like a social worker.
Yeah.
And who's this really noble guy who's like, I don't like bullies, and really tries to take a stand, and ends up getting murdered by Ronnie and thrown over a bridge.
And run over by a train.
Holy shit. I will say that was a moment where I was like, I mean, I'm like, oh, he's on a bridge. Something stupid's going to happen. But holy cow. But it's like, but then after that, we kind of lose the whole social sort of angle. I felt like with Ronnie villain, it's more just like, oh, he's a bad guy and he killed somebody. Fair enough. But
right.
But then it's like, you almost forget that it's like, there's like, he's mean, he's strong arming all these local businesses and working class and poor class people. And it's like we lose the social justice kind of element of it. And so until it conveniently comes back up at the ending.
Right at the end of the movie.
Yeah. And so it just, that was weird to me, especially after all the courtroom shit where it's like, and he literally threatens to kill Sid in court in front of the judge and everybody.
And they're just like, get him out of here. Like,
I love the judges like, you'll stop that. It's like, what? Like, he literally just, I'm sure he's innocent. Like, he just tried to kill somebody, the key witness in court.
It's there are courtroom scenes, there are fight scenes, there are like slow moments, there's boxing scenes. Like, this movie has everything.
Shopping montages.
Yeah.
There's literally a shopping montage.
It has a really good musical number. Atia Kai Kalandala is a great song. Like, fantastic. It's super memorable. I mean, again, it's stuck in my head for the rest of the day. That being said, it's 3 hours of this. Like, it's so meandering. Like, it feels like we go all over the place just to end up at the logical conclusion of Ronnie and Siddharth having to fight each other. Like, we didn't have to spend 3 hours getting there. Like,
this is what happens when you put a movie that could be easily 90 minutes, 120 max at the very maximum, and make it 3 hours. It's too much. Oh, but with the boxing scene, so I'm glad you brought that up earlier, because I couldn't shake this. I don't know if this occurred to you. Anybody listening, you guys probably know that me and Chris are huge pro wrestling fans. And we, this match, because when he's told to lose the match, even though he's doing great and he's kicking the other guy's ass, he does technically lose it, but he no-sells it in a way that made me think of, Chris, are you familiar with that match between Shawn Michaels and Hulk Hogan?
Yeah.
Where we're
bouncing around the ring like a pinball.
That is one of the fun. I'm so torn on that, because on one hand, it's the most unprofessional thing you will ever see a wrestler probably do on that level.
And that level of wrestler being that unprofessional too.
And that, but it somehow also is one of the funniest things. I think if it was another wrestler, if he did that to Roddy Piper or somebody who was a really good wrestler and charismatic and not a racist,
not a terrible piece of shit on his own.
Right. Yeah, it would be more horrible. But the fact that he's doing it to Hogan, it makes me laugh. It's like, this is goddamn, dude. Like, just, you had one job, you had one job. But I mean, he's getting legit beat the shit out of Sid is in this match, but he literally binds his arms in the ropes and just lets himself get walloped, and that doesn't get him DQ'd. I know boxing,
the ref doesn't stop it.
Yeah, that confused me. Now, granted, I'm not as into boxing as I am to wrestling, but it seems like somebody would say something at that point, I would think.
Can't keep yourself up, man. Can't support yourself. It's I think my issue with this movie kind of stems from those kinds of scenes where it's just like overwritten. They put Amir Khan's character through the ringer. To what end?
Yeah.
Like, to what end? For him to just realize he shouldn't associate with people like Ronnie Singh? Like, I don't understand Amir Khan's journey in this movie, I guess, is kind of what I'm getting at. He starts out as a kid in these flashbacks, and his dad outs his Indian freedom movement friends and they die. So then he kills himself, I guess.
Yeah, that was that's the thing. Like, there was just so many things like this in this movie that if it had been, I think if the script had been gone through one more drafting process and they kind of cleaned it up, like, you have things that have a lot of potential. Because I mean, that's heavy. Like, when I think of somebody going out like that, I think of The Reflecting Skin, where that kid sees, his father lights himself on fire and goes out that way, which that is an excellent and highly disturbing movie. But that scene, especially because the father is this really nice guy, like, you're like, holy shit, like, that's really fucked up. And in this, it just seems like, oh, and I mean, somebody killing themselves should not just elicit an oh in general. Like, that's a heavy, heavy subject matter, obviously. Right. But especially to set themselves on fire while their children are nearby. Like, well,
that's what I didn't understand. Like, was he murdered? Like, did he do it to himself? Like, again, what's weird about this movie is it really, for as long as this movie is, for being 2 hours, 42 minutes long, it doesn't explain a lot. Like, it doesn't give us moments with these characters that matter. It doesn't give us time with the characters to see their relationship really grow and feel real. Amir Khan and Rani Mukherjee, they're great together when they're together on screen.
Yeah.
Which is like infrequently in the later almost 2 hours of the movie. They're together what seems like a lot right out of the gate when they meet one another, and they have like 3 songs back to back, including, the Kandala song. But then she just kind of disappears. And she's just kind of hanging out. And it's weird because, again, Rani Mukherjee, fantastic actress. She's in this movie because of who she is. She's a great actress. And they just sideline her. Why?
Yeah. And her chemistry. I love her chemistry and interactions with Amir Khan. Like, I thought they played off each other so well. That was actually, I think, to me, one of the biggest strengths of this movie was those two together when they are together. Like, but yeah, it's like, and that's the other problem is, like, you'll have characters kind of disappear for a little while.
Yeah.
And like we introduced to her because she's hanging out with this biker gang.
Charlie.
Charlie.
That might be the best scene in the entire movie.
That's a great scene. And I love that actor playing Charlie has like such a great old school kind of rugged handsomeness. Like, he kind of reminded me of is it George? I'm gonna mess up his name.
They were gonna say Marlon Brando in On the Waterfront.
No. No, George, is it George Chakras? He's in West Side Story.
Okay.
And he's one of the sharks, and he's gorgeous man. But he kind of reminded me of him. He's almost got kind of like a Frank Langella.
Yeah.
Kind of Frank Langella meets, there's a rockabilly singer who we just lost not too long ago named Robert Gordon. He's got like that kind of energy, which is perfect for that kind of character. Like if this was an American movie, he would be played by a rockabilly guy or something.
Right. Right. Oh, totally.
And he's great. And yeah, the whole thing where they're playing chicken with the train, that was really, and I guess like Amir Khan did his own stunt with that shit, which is terrifying.
God, he didn't know how close he had gotten to the train until after he watched the footage, apparently.
Oh my God.
Yeah, fuck that. That scene is the best scene in the movie, but it is also the scene that like there no way they would be doing something like that anymore. They wouldn't be having Amir Khan do it.
No, I haven't felt like that since watching, like, when you watch some of Jackie Chan's like older like Hong Kong film, some of the stuff he does where you're just like, oh my God, dude.
I'm glad you did it right, because the margin for error is essentially zero. So
yeah,
like when they because they show that shot of him jumping out of the way of the train from 2 angles, which is like the one angle from behind is fine, but when they show it from kind of the front of the train, it's harrowing to say the least.
Yeah.
And then when he grabs him off the train tracks, it's just as crazy. Like, it's just as close of a call.
Oh my God. I know. It's in essence like the silent era in Hollywood, where stuntmen died like every week or something because there were no like laws. But yeah, it's crazy. But that's the thing. The characters, they have this one character who in the gang, I'm trying to remember, he has the best jacket that says, was it Sexy Dixie?
Yeah.
So Sexy Dixie, I'm assuming is coded gay.
I mean, that character Seems pretty gay.
Yeah, I mean, he's got I love his yellow highlights, and he's got that matching shirt at one point that matches his highlights.
Yep.
And he have like a high pitch, like,
yeah,
like
it's very effeminate.
Yeah.
It's not obvious or anything. Wink, wink.
Yeah. I mean, they don't have him make out with a dude.
but but again, like they go as far as they can realistically go.
Yeah.
That scene against the train race scene won the Filmfare Award for Best Scene of the Year when they used to do those. So,
wow.
Yeah. So, and again, like, it makes perfect sense. I kind of wish that the movie was more like the first half or the first act, where it's like him and the bikers and her, and then it becomes like something else entirely that really is just not as compelling.
I agree. No, I agree. I almost wonder if they had gone, because the thing is that we don't see Charlie, and I kept thinking, are we going to see him?
Because gone for 2/3 of the movie.
Because Ronnie's character, like Alicia, that's his girl, and Amir Khan's like Sid is basically now that's his girl. Now there's no conflict. We never see Charlie. We don't even hear his name mentioned until almost towards the end of the movie. Yeah. Where they conveniently show back up.
Deus Ex Motorcycle Gang. Yes.
But I did get to see Sexy Dixie. That's what I'm calling my character now, is Sexy Dixie.
I understand why they introduced his character so that the Rani Mukherjee character could kind of make sense in the context of the movie and how she kind of becomes part of Amir Khan's life. But to completely shuttle and just like disregard that other character and all those other characters felt like a missed opportunity, because that, as good as the actor playing Ronnie Singh is, which he's great, Sharat Saxena is fantastic, it's just not very compelling. He's just a big gang boss. Like, there's nothing compelling about him. There's nothing interesting. He's got a great mustache, wears jeans, and he rolls his button-up shirts up. Like, it's a good role, but the role of Charlie, I think, is a much more interesting character, and one that kind of has more of a connection to Amir Khan's character and a conflict that would make sense.
Yeah, well, and the thing too is, like, with the villain Ronnie, he's really, I mean, he's just like big angry dude, which that's my other beef, is that for him to have such a hothead about himself, like, he's got a temper, to say the least. How is he this effective, like, organized crime member? Because everybody knows, like, if you're a master criminal, you keep that shit cool, and you wait to where you can lay low before you, like, enact your vengeance.
No, he's just screaming at people in the courtroom.
Yeah, like, I will kill you. Like,
I'm gonna fucking kill you, bro. He's just kidding. Yeah, he's just making a joke.
I love how he's like, he's slander. It's literally like the Rick James bit on the comedian that I'm not a fan of anymore show. Yeah, right. I'm going to attribute that to but the bit is with Charlie Murphy, and I love Charlie Murphy, so he's fine. But where Rick James is accused of rubbing his shoes into the couch, and he says, "I didn't do such a thing. Why would I do that?" Yeah, I remember rubbing my shoes in his couch. Like, this character basically does it. He's like, he's lying about me. I would never kill somebody. I'll fucking kill you. Yeah. Like, it's like, what? Like,
well, and like, if it were played for laughs, it would be funny, but it's not.
No, it's played deadly serious.
Right. Honestly, like, that might be my biggest issue with this movie in general, is like it's really, like, tonally all over the place, because it's serious, but then we're supposed to have this, like, love story between Amir Khan and Rani Mukherjee, which, like, doesn't fit in the movie, to the point where they forget about it, because it's really the story about Amir Khan and his brother, played by Rajit Kapoor. Like, that's really what the story of the movie is. That's where they invest most of their time. It feels like Rani Mukherjee is just an afterthought who exists so that there can be musical numbers, which, again, perfectly fine. That song, the Kandala song, is fantastic. It's so good that I'm okay with there being musical numbers in this movie, but the musical numbers are good, but that doesn't make up for a movie being 3 hours long and spinning its wheels for like 45 minutes.
Yeah. Well, and the problem too is, like, when it's paced that way, when characters are affected, you're not hit hard like you should be by it. Like it's like when the brother character, spoiler, not that we need spoilers, I don't know. When he gets killed, like it's supposed to be this big dramatic thing because and it's like at that point you're not really, very little about the brother other than okay, he's good with numbers. He has worked for this crime syndicate for pretty much most of his adult life. He says some shitty things about their dead dad. And he kind of cares about his brother, and that's it. Like, but you don't really get a sense of who he is as a human. Right. We don't really get to see. I mean, we get a throwaway line about, oh, well, without him, we would be out on the streets. But that's it. We don't really. It's like show, don't tell. We're told and not shown, and that's an issue.
Yeah, and I think it's just a lack of focus in this movie that really just kind of causes it to stumble, because really it should have been closer to something like D-War, which is a movie that I watched last year, which was about two brothers on opposite sides of the law type thing. Because that's kind of where we're at with this. At some point later in the movie, it's like one is a criminal and one isn't, and has kind of rejected it completely.
Yeah.
And like there's just not enough conflict between Amir Khan and anyone that really matters. Like the conflict is with Ronnie only because he killed his brother. That's it. Like he did what Ronnie asked constantly. Yeah. He took the plunge. He beat up the cricketer. Like he did what he wanted. So it's with his brother. That's the problem, because his brother was, not doing what Ronnie wanted. But like that's not interesting. That's not interesting enough not to spend, again, ostensibly 2 hours on.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's just, and it's too bad because I do think, I mean, to be fair, it is far from the worst movie I've ever seen. And,
it's not a bad movie, I don't think.
It's not. It's entertaining enough. And, I do think it's like, if you're a fan of, like, especially if you're a fan of Amir Khan, it's worth seeing. But it's just kind of, I don't know, it kind of leaves you a little, I get more frustrated when I think movies are decent, but I know they could be better.
Right.
And if something's just terrible, then it's like almost like a lost cause kind of thing half the time. Like, but there's promise there, but it just needs, like, if they would have tightened it up, or even maybe get rid of a subplot or two, just narrow the focus a little bit.
Right. I honestly think that is the biggest issue with the movie in general, is the lack of focus.
Yeah.
Just a total lack of focus on the narrative. Because again, I mean, you have a ex-boxer whose brother works for a crime lord. There are plenty of directions to go with that. Plenty of directions. And if you're using On the Waterfront, ostensibly, as a starting point, you don't have to hew close to the plot of that movie. Not that it does, but it tries to. I mean, if it tries to, but I mean, tries to in the most, basic sense, frankly.
Yeah.
It's almost to the point where it should have just done something else. Like use the On the Waterfront setup as your starting point, but go somewhere else.
Yeah, okay, I'm still just like on the water. Are you kidding me? Where we didn't get any sort of variation of that. The most famous scene from the waterfront was like, I used to be a contender. I mean, people quote that movie, they've never even seen it. It's that legendary. There's nothing akin to that in this movie.
No.
Nothing. And it's like, I didn't even really see him as a boxer until like until way into the movie.
And he's supposedly like a boxing champion.
That's just that we're just kind of neglected to tell that until that's the other problem, is I feel like there are details that the film just kind of neglects until it's convenient.
Right. Yeah. A plot contrivance, as it were.
Yeah.
Right. Like, oh, okay. Like his dad was lit on fire. Like it almost feels like his dad was lit on fire just so they could have that weird scene where he's like having a flashback while the guy is being lit on fire during the celebration, which is so weird.
That is very weird.
Comes out of nowhere and then isn't even addressed until like an hour and a half later in the movie. It's like almost, again, like a lot of things in this movie, forgotten for like a while. Like you could re-reference it. They kind of mentioned their dad, but like it's not even clear that it was their dad in any of this. Like this is some weird flashback of a guy on fire. Like, all right.
Yeah. I mean, they also do, I think when Harry gets thrown off the bridge, it's intercut, and that was actually a little bit of good editing there, where it's like, he's seeing this guy that he likes get murdered, and that's traumatic, but then the image of a man falling
Right.
off of service, is triggering that memory. But yeah, the other thing is the character arc is so, because think about when we talked about Thugs of Hindustan, Amir Khan plays a character who's very morally in a gray area in a lot of ways. Like he's kind of a little bit of a bad guy, a little bit of a trickster, but you like him.
Puckish rogue.
Oh my God, he's such a puckish rogue. And but then we see him kind of, develop a conscience, and we realize now he's got redemption. But that's kind of played a little more effectively, actually a lot more effectively here, because, initially we're seeing him steal money from the one person who's defending him.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, oh, I don't want to do that. I feel bad. And it's I feel like there needs to be a little more thought.
How bad of a guy are you, Amir Khan?
Yeah. Oh, he's
you're real bad. You're real bad.
Yeah. No, but
I don't know. He should be much more morally gray.
Mm-hmm.
Much more morally gray. And the fact that he isn't, were they afraid that by making him less likable, that the movie would be less successful? I wonder, you know what I mean? I wonder that, because even in Thugs of Hindustan, he never goes full heel. I guess he does at one point in the movie, but they turn it around really quick, and it barely works. It feels really contrived in that movie for a completely different reason.
Yeah.
But I do kind of have a hard time taking Amir Khan as a bad guy.
He's so lovable. I mean,
he doesn't look. Yeah, there's. Yeah. I don't know. Look, I've watched a fair amount of Amir Khan movies with you, and then I've watched a fair amount, on my own. And there's not a single role that I've seen him in where I'm not he elevates this role by being in this movie. Mm-hmm. But sometimes, this movie being one of the cases, Thugs of Hindustan being another one, it's they don't know what to do with him, which is strange to me, because it should be readily apparent what to do with Amir Khan.
It's Amir Khan. Come on.
Yeah.
You got the keys to the kingdom.
Yeah, he's one of the three Khans. There's nothing that I don't think he can't do as an actor. And this movie was rather well received. I mean, we're kind of not in a minority, but this movie was nominated for 6 Filmfare Awards, including Best Film, Best Director, Best Actor, and like I mentioned, it won Best Scene, which I think totally deserving of, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
But I can't help but wonder, would a different actor have been better in the role, just so it would be more believable for him to be a little bit more of a gray area character? Again, I don't know every single Indian actor out there in the world, but Amir Khan is just too darn nice.
That's a good question. No, I really like that question, because now I'm thinking, and as I've said before many times, I am very much a neophyte to the world of Indian cinema, which is why I love doing this, because you are helping me broaden my horizons and get educated, which I highly encourage anybody listening this, especially if you're like me and you're just getting into this, please. This is such a rich world. It's amazing. But when I think about, because that kind of character, with American cinema, you would see probably at its height in the 70s, I would say, 70s, 80s. Ex-boxer,
ex-whatever.
Right.
Charles Bronson would have played that character.
Or even in a more low-key film, you would have had somebody maybe a Ben Gazzara, or Stacy Keach plays an ex-boxer in Fat City, which is an excellent movie and I highly recommend. But Stacy Keach, these are character actors who aren't, I think Stacy Keach is very handsome, but yeah, he's handsome in a very kind of weird masculine guy who's been through some shit kind of way,
right.
not puckish rogue,
right?
Which I'm stealing that phrase now, and I'm gonna put it in everything, Chris.
Puckish
I love it.
Rogue.
Be how was that slice of cake? I think it's so good. Even a puckish rogue would like it.
I would watch A Midsummer's Night Dream with Amir Khan as Puck.
Fuck yes.
That would be pretty good.
Oh my God.
And Amitabh or even Rajnikant playing the King Oberon. Yeah, I would watch that.
Take my money now.
That would take those British turds to task and start adapting their shit and making money off of it.
Oh, hell yeah. Well, it'd be a lot better than that version with Michelle Pfeiffer.
I've never seen. I've only
seen clips of it, but come on.
It's interesting. I would think someone more like Salman Khan would be in the role of this movie again. it's not unbelievable, but it's hard for me to take Amir Khan seriously as a less than straight arrow. Like, I imagine he could bend a little bit, but nobody watches movies with these actors, Shah Rukh Khan, Salman Khan, Rajni Khan, Amitabh. Nobody's watching those movies to see them be the villains. Unless they're cast as the villain, and that is the sole purpose that they're in the movie, is to be the villain. But then that's the highlight of the movie, is that they're the villain. In this movie, Amir Khan's character could have been played by anyone. He elevates the role, but it doesn't feel like a role that is uniquely for Amir Khan, or that Amir Khan is bringing something to, like with a movie that I just watched, PK, where it's like nobody else could have played this role. Nobody else. Amir Khan, and that's it. It makes perfect sense. In this, it could have been anybody. That's how unexciting and kind of just workmanlike the script and the dialogue feels to me. It's just not. It's not that they're not trying. It's that they're just not doing anything past the bare minimum.
Yeah. Well, and the thing too is, like, they don't even have the character himself make a decision. Like, when he's hesitant to do the whole thing with the cricketer, and it's like, okay, that's a step in the right direction. But then when we see him with the cricketer, he has no problem beating the shit out of him and threatening him. Like, that's where you would have that character, to me, like, show a hesitation in the interaction. Right. And show a little bit like, oh God, I don't want to do this, but I don't want to get, my brother in trouble. I don't want to get in trouble. We don't see any of that. The whole gag about the Chinese bomb thing, I think was clever. It's
like it's from a different movie. Like, totally. You know what I mean? Like, it feels like when he's being kind of cheeky, it feels like a different movie. Like, this movie is, and we've talked about this before with other Indian cinema. You and I have. Sometimes these movies are masala films, like with Muthu, and it's like tonally all over the place. This movie's not that, but it does have moments where it is tonally weird and doesn't kind of mesh with the other parts of the movie. The musical acts in this movie really stand out. As good as they are, they stand out in this isn't that kind of movie in a lot of ways. Yeah. Kandala is a great song. It's already on my Spotify playlist saved. That's how much I liked it. But it could have been it should have been in a better movie, and a movie that was a romantic comedy or a romantic film, because it just doesn't work in this. It's too upbeat. It's too poppy. It's too much fun for a movie that's taking itself as seriously as this one is.
No, that's an excellent point. I agree. And actually, it's funny because you mentioned Muthu, and earlier we were talking about the editing with this film, and just how, you'll have quick cuts, but they don't really work. Right. And Muthu was a film that, for all of its weirdness, its glorious, amazing, almost divine weirdness of it, and I still am thinking about that movie. It's so good. And there's you'll have a quick cut to geese. Like, they're looking in on the action in Muthu, which I meant to bring up in our episode. It's almost like, there'll be cuts to animals, like they're watching fights or whatever. But it adds to it. It adds to sort of the great sort of like flavor of the film. It's just this weird, amazing, magical gumbo of a movie, or a masala of a movie. But that kind of magical sort of weirdness doesn't work for a film that's supposed to be gritty. Right. And like,
take
Muthu,
itself that seriously.
Yeah, Muthu is almost like, it's not a fairy tale, but it almost feels like one at times, just because it has that, it's almost like magical realism. Right. Where that is allegedly based on the waterfront. Allegedly.
So you say.
I'm sorry. That's still cracking me up. And also, like, what? Really?
I guess. Again, I didn't make it up. Like, I'm as shocked as you are to hear someone go, this is based off On the Waterfront. Like, he's an ex-boxer, I guess, and there's a crime boss, I guess, but like, that's it.
We do see a waterfront.
Yeah, several times. They are on a waterfront at one point. Is that what you mean? Is that what you mean?
The only thing missing was the character being like, I can't believe we're on the waterfront.
Me either. Yes, for we surely are. Let us go somewhere else.
We needed a titular line. That's what we...
Hey, that's the name of the movie.
Yeah. I see what you did there.
I don't know what really could have fixed the movie for me, but I really feel like Amir Khan kind of underserved, underutilized. Just it's not that he's not right. It's just what makes this role special. What does he bring to this that makes it special? Or what does this role have that allows him to do his thing? Neither. Like Amir Khan does the best that he can with this movie. That's like, he's great, but you could hear him read a phone book and it'd be great. So
would watch.
Yeah. Like that's the issue with something like this. It's not trying hard enough to differentiate itself from the other God knows how many action movies that Amir Khan had in the 90s. Because I've already seen one. It's called Sarfaraz, and it's better than this movie by heads and tails because it understands that action and comedy work well together. Action and romance, not so much. Like, I don't like action romance movies are kind of a dime a dozen quality wise.
Yeah.
And this is not really an action movie. Like there's very little actual action in this movie or set pieces. There's like 3 is what it feels like.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. It's like you can do a hybrid, but it's like any kind of genre hybrid. Like for it to be good, you have to make sure that the ingredients are all fully mixed together and that there's also at least 1 or 2 elements that make it stand apart. So you just don't end up getting this like sluice of both genres where it's just muddled. You know, and I think this movie in its worst moments is just kind of that. It's just this sort of awkward mixture that doesn't quite work. And, you know, which is too bad because, I mean, the cast and that would be like, I would recommend this movie. Like if you're a fan of the major cast, you know, even though some of them, well, everybody could have been better utilized and some of them really could have been better utilized. Everybody's great. I mean, I liked the actor that played Harry. I mean, we don't get a whole lot of him. But I thought that guy was great. Like, I thought he was very likable, very warm. And I mean, it's not like we get a lot of that actor or that character on screen. But he did a really good job of making you like, yeah, this guy gives a shit. Like, this is a good, you know, and that's not an easy thing to do when you're not given a lot as an actor, especially when you're on screen for like, 20 minutes? Like, yeah, to make that stand out. But so I mean the cast are certainly great. It's just it's so weird though. You can never tell how the dice will roll with how films are perceived, because when we talked about Things of Hindostan, which isn't a perfect movie, and we both kind of went into the flaws and strengths of that one too. But that movie was like, is to this day is very dicey as far as how it's received. But I still think that's a better movie than Ghulam, because I mean, there were times where I was almost not bored with Ghulam, but it's like it dragged. Yeah. Like and even the draggier moments in Thanks to Hindustan, there's still something entertaining that you can kind of like grab onto. Like there's some color, or there's something going on, and you definitely get a lot more depth, I think, with those main characters than you do here.
Yeah, and yeah, obviously that movie has Amitabh Bachchan in it, which is kind of unfair, but at the same time, like nobody in this movie is turning in a bad performance. It's just they're not being given anything interesting to do. It feels strangely pedestrian.
Yeah, I mean, if this was like a triple bill, like if we were doing an old school sort of like triple movie, this would be the B or C picture.
Yeah, probably the C picture.
Yeah, like this is not, and it sucks because like when the cast is this good, like man, these men and women are kicking ass. Like give them what they deserve. Give them something that they can like really like get their mitts on. But it's still better than the unnamed Netflix movie I refuse to talk
which is not well regarded. That movie
it shouldn't be.
Is considered a failure in its own right.
It is a failure. It's like, imagine being the worst version of herpes.
We haven't even seen it. You can't bury a movie you've never seen.
I just did. It's
Amir Khan turned in a performance of a lifetime.
He always does.
Raves Amir Khan.
and Heather and Chris.
Yeah. I don't know if this, and probably law of averages, it has to be, but at some point I'm just going to start running into just average movies. And I've run into a couple now. Not every Indian cinema film I have seen now is as good as they once were when I was watching them, intermittently. I have seen more Indian cinema in the last 8 months than I have seen in my entire life. But recently I have been running into these kind of just okay movies. This is the second. No, this is the first one, I guess. This is the first just okay movie. Because I like Thugs of Hindostan a lot more than I like this movie. A lot more.
Yeah, completely same. Yeah, but I think, though, Chris, I think that's a good sign as far as you are already so well versed. Every time you mention something, I'm always I need to write this down.
That's fair.
you're my sensei with this world. Yeah, and I love that. So that's but that typically means you're starting to get a really good education, because think about it, most Americans that only really watch major American films and aren't really cinephiles, like we are, they, even if they see something they don't like, it's not like they have the vocabulary to be oh, this is a B or C picture.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's the issues I had with this movie was because of, they were trying to cross-pollinate too many things. It's weird, but there are a lot of people that for films, it's just something to do, and then it's just they're done. It's like mini golf. It's a Big Mac. Yeah. And
there are things in my life and in your life that I don't put a lot of thought into, that there are people that's their entire livelihood, right? Think about cooking. I don't know how much you like to cook, but there are people that cook for a living, right?
Yeah.
It's like what we do. There are some people that cook at Chili's, and there are some people that cook at Texas Roadhouse, and there are some people that own their own restaurants and make their own menus and source their own ingredients, right? It's just the level of which you want to participate in the hobby. I am with you. I have a hard time not being critical, even when I'm watching something that I'm not talking about for a podcast. So it's almost unfair at times to watch things that I'm not talking about. But at the same time, like you just said, it helps me further my own dialogue and my own history and beliefs and thoughts and feelings and ideas on film by just watching more of it. That's how you get better as a film watcher, is just watching film and then talking about it, ideally, or at least thinking about it critically, even if you're just thinking about it to yourself, which, again, that's kind of an echo chamber of one. That's what I always worry about. And that's why I try to always bring in some people that are even less cinephiles than me, because we do kind of find ourselves in an echo chamber from time to time.
Oh, but we're the best echo chamber.
I know, but at the same time, it's total. There is part of this that's totally an echo chamber. Go ask 5 people that we know, hey, do you like Michael Bay movies? And they're probably all going to say, no, for the most part. Maybe they'll say I liked this one, and we might all agree on the same one. But there are more people who like Michael Bay movies than there are who don't, because those movies are insanely successful. Again, becomes a weird question, because like you said, if you're just consuming it like you would consume a bag of potato chips, like and dislike is less of a issue you care about, and more of a I like barbecue chips over plain chips, but I'm still eating chips. You know what I mean? They're just but they're ultimately just selecting mainstream media that's, like you said, not challenging, not really doing anything other than appealing to as many people as possible, which nothing wrong with that. But I want more, you want more, and more is not going to necessarily be more of the same. I'm talking, and I know you're talking, more of something different, more unique, more diverse offerings of films. And yeah, I'm glad I watched a movie like this one that's not as good as the other Indian cinema movies, because watching amazing movies over and over and over again with nothing to say but praise also gets kind of old.
Right. Well, that's actually, no, it's you read my mind, because that's the other thing, is I think it's good. It is good to watch all kinds of different movies of different qualities sometimes, because if you only saw great movies, then you'd probably wouldn't even maybe not appreciate them as much. It's sometimes it's good to see something that's just okay, because it makes the next experience you watch being you can evaluate it a little different. You can see it with a little fresher eyes. And
Well, like we said about Thugs of Hindostan right here, this movie made us both appreciate Thugs of Hindostan immensely more. I have to assume, right? Like you appreciate, I appreciate Thugs of Hindostan even. Yeah, I liked it too, but I like it now thinking about it even more because it does what this movie doesn't, which is give Amir Khan something interesting to do and hitch the wagon to Amir Khan. Like they make Amir Khan the focus of that movie. I'm not saying they don't here, but it made me appreciate that movie a lot more by watching this movie, which isn't a bad thing for either movie, frankly. And again, this isn't a bad movie. It's just not as good. And again, good is so subjective. Like my good, what does good mean even? What is the definition of is? Like that's what I, you know what I mean? Like good is so subjective. This movie was immensely successful. It was 72 million and made 242 million. That's a lot.
That's a lot of Skrilla.
Yeah. That's some mad Skrilla. Our friend from the internet community, Heather Drain. Yo, what up? You guys got that mad Skrilla?
Hey, cuz.
I heard it's sweet trill. I heard it's sweet trill.
Hey, cuz. Well, I thought it would be funny if I said it, and it was. So mission accomplished. Yeah. Yeah, and I do want to stress, I'm not, I mean, I probably can be a snob, but I try not to be. And there's certainly nothing wrong, like you said, with mainstream.
It's okay to be a snob about movies. That's what we like. Okay, if we're not allowed to be movie snobs, what are we allowed to be snobs about if that's not the thing that we actively spend? I spent 7.5 hours of a 20-hour day watching movies. What else can I be a snob about? Really?
I don't think, I view us more as like we are passionate and we give a shit.
Right.
And I don't think there's ever any shame with that.
No, I care less about money versus I do time spent on things. And I don't want to spend time on things that aren't good unless I'm going to do something productive after the fact about it.
Agreed. And that's, and that's the thing too, is that I feel like with film, with any kind of art form, like even, well, there's exceptions, but even with things that are okay. I mean, even with say Ghulam, which is realistically, it's fine. It could be a lot better. It could be a hell of a lot worse.
Right.
But even with the B or C picture, a lot of people work their asses off to get this fan. Making anybody who's even tried to do like a no budget DIY movie, just trying to get two people that aren't you, or a podcast, as you know, Chris, trying to get people that you can barely pay, if not pay, to do anything at all and have them devote their time and energy is hard. For a movie on this level, obviously people are getting paid, but even then, like, so many working parts have to come together to make a movie, especially a big budget movie where you do have a cast. I mean, the extras alone, there's a shit ton of extras in this movie.
Man, especially in the climax of the movie.
Yeah, and so it's like I have respect for the process, even if the end result isn't great. Somebody worked hard. I think that's the thing. I think the only time movies really make me mad is if they have all the elements. Like I get way more mad at big budget movies because I'm like, okay, you guys have access to the box of 120 crayons.
Right.
And you're acting, and yet you're that kid that put them all up your nose and didn't draw jack or shit with it. That's
you
how
have Santa Claus's sack and you're not opening it and taking it out. Like,
no, you have Santa Claus's nut sack. You don't have his gift sack, and that's
got that sack all right. It's I completely agree with you. It's like you have access to essentially a mystery box, like unlimited funds. You have an unlimited ATM, and this is what you came up with. Like, again, but it's decision by committee. It's decision by I make sure I don't offend people in China. I don't make sure I don't offend right wingers in the United States. Make sure I don't offend whatever X, Y, and Z. And it's like, oh my God, like maybe just don't worry about it. Like, but then you can't because if you don't make as much money, which is why Avengers made fucking whatever the gadillion dollars because it was the least offensive. Apparently, Avengers Endgame is the least offensive movie of all time.
I wish people would call it that. If they were,
isn't that what it is?
Wouldn't it be wonderful? They're like, why do you like it? It's the least offensive movie.
Yeah, it was clearly the least offensive movie because the most people agreed to go watch it, and nobody was apparently disappointed enough to not tell other people to go watch it or tell them to not. So everybody agreed collectively we should all go watch this movie, which means nobody was offended by it.
I'm offended by they're not offending. But I'm offended by
Look,
it.
I have no issue with Marvel movies, but I do come down in the same camp that you do, which is you have access to all this and this is it. Like,
yeah,
because I know Vikram Bhatt would love to have a budget of $500 billion to go and make whatever movie with Amir Khan he would love to, but that's not what he had. He had 72 million. And that's what he did is he made this movie.
Yeah.
You know, I would love to have a crazy ass budget to go make whatever the fuck I wanted. And I would make whatever the fuck I wanted. So would you.
God. My 5-hour rock and roll surf rock musical involving Tom Waits as a ladies' man that fights a devil cult and Eurotrash vampires would come to fruition.
With special appearance by Radu.
Oh my God. Yes.
Heather's blushing, everybody, at the idea of Radu.
Oh my God. And the flesh tones, like the seminal American beat Hitsville makers from New York City, ladies and gentlemen, would also be in it. I would make the most rad movie. I mean, I'm not saying it would make sense, but it would
not even be good.
No, it would be great. You're right. It wouldn't be good. It'd be phenomenal.
Right.
And if I do it, goddamn.
Yeah.
And Tom Waits. Come on.
It wouldn't have to, but that's the thing. Like, ultimately, it doesn't even have to be good. It just has to be the movie you want to make.
Well, but that's the thing. I think when somebody makes the movie that at least they're passionate about, and even if it's like, because there's a lot of silly things. I love the movie Blood Diner. Like, I'm not somebody that's like, oh, it has to be art house. Like, I love a movie if it's interesting and if I like it, because it is ultimately everybody's taste is subjective, in fairness. But when you see that at least one person on board had fun with it and it was something they genuinely are passionate about, and that could be an experimental art film, it could be a beach party movie, it could be whatever. But if at least one person, one major entity that's creative and is just putting their heart and soul into it, I feel like you can tell, and that will make it. Even if it's a mess, it's a fascinating mess. Like, I love Alex Cox's Straight to Hell, which a lot of critics hated because they were like, this is self-indulgent, it's a hot mess. It is self-indulgent and it is a hot mess, and it's fucking glorious because Alex Cox had fun. Everybody had fun. Everybody was doing something so different that they just wanted to do and just make the weirdest musical Western crime film they could. And it's great. I'm fine with hot messes as long as they're entertaining.
Right.
I think that's the problem that we have with Ghulam, is that there are parts where it drags. It's like, if you're going to be messy, make it a hot mess. Don't make it a lukewarm mess.
Honestly, just, that for me is the ultimate kind of takeaway for this movie, is that it's too long in the tooth, just way too long. It's an hour too long. If this movie were an hour and 40 minutes, I don't think we'd have nearly as many complaints.
I agree. No, I agree. If you could make a nice, lean film out of the elements that you have in the story.
2 hours even, like, could push it to 2 hours and I think you'd be fine. It's just, there's 40 minutes here that feel so unnecessary. And it's not the musical numbers. It's just it's kind of everything else. The musical numbers aren't bad. They don't need to be in this kind of movie, but that's fine. Like they're here, but they're good. So it's okay. But everything else is just kind of various degrees, various shades of mediocre.
Yeah, agreed. But you know what? The positives, we got to see Amir Khan gyrate. At one point, he does like a little bit of pelvic hip motion in one of the dance numbers, and he is shirtless at one point. And now, I'm not trying to be that bitch, okay? I'm just saying that's a fine man.
Heather's just saying that she's a fan.
But you're not.
Oh, I am as well.
Hell yeah.
I'm more of a Hrithik Roshan fan, as we've already discussed.
Have we?
We haven't watched one of his movies yet. We should.
You need to take me on that journey.
I showed you the beginning of Doom 2 where he's singing and dancing and gyrating.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah. Maybe that's where we should pivot. Maybe we take a break from Amir Khan. Maybe this was a sign to. I mean, hey, there's plenty of Amir Khan.
Unless it's a Forrest Gump.
Oh, we're not watching that.
Thank you. Oh my God. No, Chris.
We'll do that as the 100th episode of this show, and it'll be you, me, and Mike White and Father Malone.
Oh my God. Okay, I will do it.
That'll be in 4 years. 100 episodes would be like, 3.5 years. 26 episodes a year.
That's what we'll be living in our communal castle.
Yeah, all of us, the Weirding Way Media.
Yes, the Weirding Way Media Castle. I love it. That would be, oh my God. We all have like matching like paraphernalia, like
this is a
jackets.
Cult. You're describing a cult.
Well, you
as long as you don't have to call us God, I'm cool with it.
No, we have a giant painting of Amir Khan.
I thought we have a giant painting of Mike White.
We probably should actually. Mike's amazing.
Us two like this.
Oh my God,
like a commander.
Actually, Mike has my favorite quote ever about bad movies. And I agree with him, is that Mike once said that the worst movie in the world, the only people who've seen it is the filmmaker and their mother.
That's fair. It's true.
I love that comment. Also, but it's not, I think also
wouldn't the worst film in the world be the film that only the filmmaker saw? Because he was so ashamed of himself he didn't even want to edit it.
Agree.
It never even gets to the editing bay. He just shut it down. Shut it down.
Denies that he, because friends were like, were you making a movie? No.
Somebody else you must know.
Yeah.
Somebody else not named me.
Yeah, and then they like throw an object to distract them and run real fast.
Run away. Look, the full moon.
Is that Radu, the famous vampire from Full Moon Pictures Subspecies Trilogy?
Oh my God.
I fall for that every time. Dude.
Right.
Like, what?
He's back there?
Radu?
So, Heather, final thoughts on Ghulam.
My final thoughts on Ghulam. I love the strengths, which are this cast, especially Amir Khan. The music's great. The music for musical numbers is great. It left me wanting more, as far as like I wanted it to be a better film, and maybe in some ways almost probably a different film than it is. It's okay ultimately. I don't know. I don't want to shit on it too much because it's not terrible, but it's just it's fine. It's like that. It's just like a sandwich that's okay.
I'm with you.
It's an okay sandwich.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
It's okay. Again, the worst Indian cinema film that I've seen is still better than most films that I've watched. Like, this is the worst Indian cinema film that I've seen.
Oh, that's not bad.
Right? Exactly.
That's not bad,
exactly. Like it's just a little long and it doesn't use the actors, but that's really main complaints. Like, and like it being overly long makes it narratively disjointed. So of the things to fix, those are not very labor intensive. Just a second draft or a third draft, maybe. Don't just go with your rough draft. Not that I think they did, but some of the ideas in the movie just don't land. So I've like you said, I've seen better and I haven't seen worse Indian cinema wise, but if this is the worst that I've seen so far, like you just said, could be batting worse than this. So,
oh my God. Well, case in point, one of the last American films I watched in 2022 for a podcast had me so irritated by the end of it. I literally threw a pillow at the TV.
This ain't that bad.
No, this is nowhere near that bad.
So Heather, until the next time you join me to talk about Indian cinema, where can people find you on the internet?
Well, you can find me over at my website, which is mondoheather.com. You can also find me on social media. That's not TikTok, because I'm just not on TikTok, but Instagram, Twitter, and occasionally even Facebook under @mondoheather.
As for me, you can find me on the internet at weirdingwaymedia.com, which is where you can find this show and 20 plus other shows hosted by folks like myself, guests like Heather, and guests like and hosts like you've heard on this show before. So that's where you should go to find the podcast you should be listening to right now. As for this show, BollywoodCinemaClub.com, Bollywood Cinema Club on, BollywoodCinemaClub.com. Like, rate, and review on iTunes and Spotify. That's all you've got to do to help us out. Tell your friends. Watch more Indian cinema. That's what you should be doing, because that's what we've been doing. Heather, thank you so much for joining me, as always, and we'll catch you on the next episode.